we live? Your intro didn't play.
Just played it. I don't know. That was weird.
It didn't play. No, it's fine. We don't need it. But I was waiting for the music to come blaring in, and then I'm like,
yeah, it's funny. It showed on my end. How weird is that?
yeah, I didn't see it at all, nor hear it. But we were live for like 8 seconds without anything being said. So yeah, we were talking about the camp experience and the social promotion, myfootballcamps.com/D1. I think we got myfootballcamps.com/transfer.
/transfer. Yep. I'll put it up. Yep.
Yeah. So, the camp, you were asking me what it was like to be at a camp for the first time in a while. So I was at camps since, I don't know, the early 2000s. Then we did, I started my own camp business. I was at your camps in the early mid 2000s. I started my own camp business, for Rivals. And then that was bought, by Under Armour as this primary sponsor. And then, we moved from there to Adidas, but I was at Under Armour camps, Nike camps, you name it, 7-on-7s, the pylons and all those underclassmen camps like yours. I've been at a billion camps. And then COVID hit. We had our first couple camps, the COVID year in 2020, where I was at those. And then COVID shut us down immediately. In March, we stopped. 10 of our camps, including the 5-Star Challenge, were all canceled. 2021, we had a limited camp schedule, but I had already sort of moved over into college football and the portal at that time, but was still doing recruiting stuff, but I wasn't going to camps. But I went to the 5-Star Challenge. I think we did it in 2021, and that was kind of the last one. So I haven't been at camp in a while. It was no different. The biggest thing that I had to do was sort of change the way I thought about the camps, because I'm so used to going to the camps where, the 2019, I think it was the 2019 5-Star Challenge. The last 7-on-7 game came down to Trevor Lawrence versus Justin Fields, and you're at that level of evaluation where you're looking at those kids and they're both 5 stars and they're number 1 and 2 player in the country. And you're picking apart what they need to work on from a college to an NFL level, and then you go to a development camp like we had this past weekend, where there's younger kids or there's 2024 kids that, are under the radar, and it's completely different. And I kept initially thinking about, footwork versus, doing the wide receiver drills. And I'm looking at their footwork versus like Jamar Chase and Stephon Diggs. And then I'm like, after initially doing that, I'm like, I have to get out of that. I have to stop that, because those are, arguably the top 2 wide receivers in the NFL, surefire All-Americans in college, on and on and on. So that was one adjustment to me. I had a couple people come up to me and said, "You don't look thrilled to be here." And I'm like, that's just my demeanor. That's how I am.
Yeah, no, that's what I tell people.
Every camp I've been at in my entire life. It doesn't matter who's there. You could have 25 stars at a camp. I mean, we had 5-Star challenges where legitimately between over 3 classes, we had about 45 stars at those camps. And it's the same. I'm just to myself. I'm very introverted in that respect. I'm just watching and evaluating and just coming up with my own thoughts. I'm not a social gabber. I don't talk to a lot of people. So there was no difference there, but people take it as if I'm not interested or I'm miserable or whatever. No, I'm just taking it all in. So it was interesting.
I watched your process too. because the last time I think I saw you camps it had to be like 11, 12, that time frame, maybe,
Maybe.
Yeah. And, but I watched how you went and looked at when they were into like their individual period, how you walked around the stations. And we didn't walk around, but you kind of like maneuvered.
No, you find one spot where you can watch.
Maneuvering your body. Yeah.
Right. So and I used to do that too, even when I was younger. And obviously at the beginning, when they're doing the dynamic warm-ups and stuff like that, I'm getting my steps in and I'm walking around and I'm trying to loosen up. It's cold in there.
It's cold. Yeah.
But, I keep an eye on who's doing this, who's doing what. And physically, the initial warm up and stretching portion, you evaluate physical characteristics. Who's
Right.
this big kid? What position is he? Who's this kid? Is he a 2026 or is he a 2024? Big difference. If he's a 2026, he probably has a chance. 2024, maybe not as much of a chance, on and on. And then as you get into the testing is not overly interesting to me, unless I look at the numbers, And
Right.
so when we tested, we at one point we had a combine / camp. When we moved to Under Armour, it was all camp because those kids didn't want to test. They didn't care about testing. They didn't want a bad time. They weren't trying to impress everybody. They were actually trying to sort of keep themselves impressive. So if they busted up a 4.6, they'd be upset because they think they're 4.4 kids. But before that, we had combines, and I would worry about the testing numbers. I really never saw a broad jump that made me think differently about a kid. The result, if a kid jumps 10.9, then I'm like, okay. But watching him jump 10.9 didn't do much for me. Same with the 40, because that's technique more than it's pure speed. Shuttle, all that stuff. The shuttle would probably be the only testing and evaluation thing I would look at. Vertical doesn't really do a ton for me unless I see him high pointing an actual football instead of hitting a chart or the sticks. But the shuttle, you could see a lot of side movement and stuff like that. But when it gets down to the positional groups and the drills there, then you find one spot where you can watch this position. You can turn around, watch these two positions, and they rotate through. And you make sure, you're watching each of them because, when you started, they had the quarterbacks all in one spot doing one drill, which really didn't have a whole lot to do with quarterbacks, but a little. Then the next drill, maybe more. Then the next positional drill, nothing really, because there's some backpedaling and not gonna see that quarterbacks much. But then you go to the one-on-ones, and that's where you could tell a lot about who can stand out, who does this and that, who closes well. So it's no different than any other process I've ever had. And at the end, meeting and greeting people has never been my strong point. I've always been kind of quiet and reserved to myself. And I make jokes on here, about people throwing DVDs at my head and everybody wanting attention. And I think early in the process, when I first became, a big name at Rivals, that was it. Like everybody wanted my attention. So it kind of like got me to not want people to want my attention because they weren't doing it because they cared about me or my opinion. They wanted their kid to have as much attention as possible. Then I became very, very truthful.
Right.
And that got me into trouble because, people want to hear what they want to hear. And I'm not talking like with parents. I'm talking super parents. So, like Phil Simms and his kids, I got an argument with Phil Simms over his second kid, not Chris, the other one, about his mechanics and stuff like that. And mostly it's like NFL level parents or college level parents who played the sport don't want to hear what you have to say because it's, anything is sort of criticism and they take it personally. So then I just sort of started clamming up from there. So it was an interesting camp. The impressions I got from it, okay, because, a small group of kids in an area. I was more impressed than I thought I would be. And I'm not saying that, every kid there is a Division I football player. There are probably like a handful of kids that have a chance at FBS. Most of the kids are, Division II FCS level. And most of the kids I'm talking about are younger. So they have that chance. A 2027 quarterback, you can't eliminate as much as you can a 2024 quarterback because that 2024's got 1 year left. And he's got these limitations and there's not going to iron out. Whereas a 7th or 8th grader, he's got time to grow, get stronger. I was more impressed than I expected. And the competition was kind of good. You could see a lot about kids who wants it, who has that will and want to be better, hustle, all those things that I knew you could tell from camps, even when you're talking about 5 stars, was there and present. I think there's a lot of kids we can help. That's what I came away with the most because I'm in a different business model now. I'm not ranking 5 and 4 star kids. I'm talking about social promotion for kids who are looking for attention and scholarships. And there were more than a handful of kids that I thought we could really help. A couple of them are on the cusp, as we've discussed, who can blow up, and we would speed that process up exponentially for them. A couple of them that nobody knows about or won't even look at because they don't fit into this specific box that we could definitely promote and help. And then a couple of the younger ones that I think could get on the radar early that, don't wait too long until they're heading into their senior year and then it's too late. So that was my impression.
Absolutely. That's really interesting. Great take. I First of all, it was great to see you back. I forgot, because I'm like 6'2". I forgot that you were such a big guy as well, which was funny when you first came over. I was like, oh, that's right, Mike is a big guy. I forgot. It's like
Always been a
yeah,
big.
yeah. So I was like, oh, that's right. Of course, none of us are in the ballpark of Javon Parker, the D line coach, who is 6'6", 6'7", who played like 5 years in the NFL as like a 3-tech nose guard. Um, but what was really I thought was great about the combination of the two of us, and I think going forward we'll definitely strategize how to make that a norm. It may not be where you're always there, but to be able to leverage the capabilities, right? Um, was the fact that like your style is different than my style, and it worked really well. I'm a camp guy, right? And now we're doing the promotions together to help these kids, but also now we're starting to rank the kids as well on our end. So I think there's like a powerful combination thing. So and kids came up to me and asked me, will it be like? I said, the first step is we'll have a watch list, and some of the kids who stood out here are definitely going to be on that watch list. And then we continue to see how you progress, and then stars can come from there. There may be one or two kids initially that we probably could in the younger age group that you could tag stars to, right? At the younger group, but I thought it was really interesting. The second observation was camps wise. So many years ago when we started, we were national underclassmen. I think we were focused mostly 9th and 10th graders was our sweet spot. But now it's really pushed to almost like 9th and 8th. I noticed a lot of 9th and 8th, right? I think you probably noticed that, right? As I was coming through and you're like, oh, this kid's pretty good. And he's like, I'm 2026. And I'm like, whoa, okay. Or I'm 2027. I'm like, well, all right. Because the old mind frame, and you probably think the same way, like you were looking originally in the old days, juniors mostly. Then it did push down the freshmen and sophomores. And so those are like an older, more mature group, the sophomore group, right? And it was interesting that there were so many 9th and 8th graders as a part of the process, which kind of also tells about how recruiting is going as well. I thought that was really interesting, and a lot of really good talent at that level as well, and pretty polished, not polished like a 2024 would be, but much more polished than I would say 10 years ago in the 9th and 8th grade. I remember 9th and 8th graders used to be really, you would see raw athleticism, but you wouldn't see good route running, let's say. It might be their first time running their route in the camp. I saw a little bit more polishedness in younger kids than I think I've seen before. But it was very, very, very interesting. I mean, some of the kids that really, stood out. I mean, obviously that 4.4 stood out, and then he was good in everything else as well. And that guy was a 2024. But the player from Lacey as well, the 8th grader. Actually, the two 8th graders that stood out to me was the quarterback from Delaware. Let's see, let me make sure I have the name right because I have it in front of me. The quarterback from Delaware was. I did have it in front of me, I thought. And his mother, by the way, wrote a fantastic email about all those kids that came down from Delaware. It was very interesting. She wrote a great email. I would read it verbatim, but it was actually such a great long email. She said the kids could not stop talking about it on the way back, and I think that's a good thing about the camp opportunity is to be able to go out and compete. And I'm trying to find it. It's funny, I have every card in front of me except I'm not seeing where they wrote QB on it, because I know I have it in front of me. Oh, maybe I put it over here. I'll have to find that. But it was it was really those two eighth graders really stood out to me as being like huge difference makers. It was interesting to see a 6'2" running back. By the way, I found out last night that he scored 30 touchdowns in eighth grade last year, which is mind blowing for an eighth grader. I'm just trying to like pull the quarterback's name. I'll find it in a second. But the receiver running back was Joey Davis from Lacey, and 30 touchdowns in eighth grade. Now, obviously, that's like AYF competition and down it. But to me, I was like, wow, this kid. He may be a running back in high school, maybe a DB in high school. He could be an outside linebacker down the line,
Right.
safety. Could end up being a receiver. He's so big to start out from the get go. I think that was interesting to see. That something that I wasn't used to seeing in a long while. An eighth grader or the seventh grade lineman, Kern. He come over, took a picture next to me, and he was much taller than me.
Yeah, me too. Yeah. Yeah.
I was like, wow. So those are the things that you start to look at when people are trying to figure out, like, what do you look at in a younger guy, right? It must be potential, right? Like the frame, do they do certain things well? Are they already of a certain size? Does that, is that a big deal? And do they have the skill sets already? That's the thing that was mind blowing to me. And I didn't realize till after, like the receiver from Toms River North, Nasir, who ran a 4.60. Like Toms River North is so loaded. He played a lot, but he's only a 2026 or 5, and he's still working within the system, and he was dominating. He was the receiver MVP at the camp. It's amazing to see how those kids were competing. So,
yeah, and size is the first thing. So when I go to camps, and it's been this way since the very beginning, that's why the dynamic warm up, you just sort of size them up and then you see what positions they go to. So, like the running back you're talking about, 6'2" kid, he goes to running back and you're like, interesting. And you and I talked about it. They want him to get touches. So he's not, I don't think he's a running back at the next level.
right.
I think he'll be, like you said, a wide receiver or a DB or a linebacker or something like that. It depends on how he grows, but that's the first thing that pops into your head. And it's with everybody. It's not just me. It's Nick Saban. That's how they initially evaluate somebody, is based on your size. Then there's the outliers, who aren't very big, but they pop off a really good time. Like AJ Bosch, the kid who ran the 4.4.
Yep.
Now he's a 2024. He's not that big. He's 5'9", 170. But that time gets your attention, so that's why the testing part is important, because I don't think, you would see him in one-on-ones, obviously very fast, but to run a 4.4 on that type of surface, when everybody else is running in 4.6 range, that stands out. Then you look at him, you're like, okay, well, you got to overcome the size. What position is he going to play? Is he too small to be a wide receiver? Too small to be a corner? Or can he be a slot? Where does he fit? And then honestly, the skill comes in after that. If you don't have the testing or you don't have the size, you better be really, really good at something to stand out, whether that's making acrobatic, crazy catches. Maybe you're a 4.6 or 4.7 kid, but you're very angular and you can adjust to poorly thrown balls, or you got great hand-eye coordination, or, you drop in coverage so fluidly or whatever. So those things kind of are what will stand out. But camps, for the longest time, when you started the underclassmen camps, there weren't any. Nike rarely invited underclassmen. They had to be really special in the early 2000s. You were evaluating most of the kids that were heading into their senior year, and that's how recruiting was. Then camps became honestly more about underclassmen than about those other kids, because offers started coming earlier and earlier, and kids had offers in 9th grade, and they were already on the radar. So when I look at the camp like this, if I see a kid who's a 2024 who doesn't have a whole lot going on in recruiting, but I think he's got skills, and he may be one of those guys that doesn't fit, the size like AJ, but he's got the speed. I think the social promotion could help him find a home. Because no one's going to know he busted off a 4.4 at your camp. I mean, he tweeted it out, but nobody's going to see it. It's like, nobody's going to hear or see that. He's going to need the legitimacy of two dudes who have been doing this for a very long time to say, yeah, that was a 4.4. I mean, you were on the clock for it. I believe it was your watch, and you saw everybody else go and nobody came close to the 4.4. So that's legitimate right there. Because how do you know who's timing? How do you know it's measured off? It's not 38 yards and 40 yards. So they need the legitimacy of someone who's been doing it for a long time to actually put that number out. And then, to have us say this kid can do something, whether it's FCS, because I think that's probably his sweet spot as a 2024. But if he was a 2026 and he's 5'9", then you still have the growth potential. Maybe he could get to 5'11". Maybe he could get to 190 pounds. Maybe he'll even get faster. And that's where the promotion works on a long-term basis for underclassmen too. But it's needed. I mean, so every kid there, I could see maybe 2 kids out of that camp get offers on their own. And I'm talking Power 5 offers. Maybe 4 kids, 5 kids be at the group of 5 to Power 5 level. And then everybody else is scrambling for FCS and Division II, which is fine. It helps pay for your school, and FCS especially is with the transfer portal. But they're going to have to fight tooth and nail to get anything. And that's where the promotion is going to help them quite a bit. So we saw a couple of kids that, I think we could get offers for within a month, maybe 2 weeks.
Yep.
And then we saw some kids that it would be a long 6-month, 7-month grind to get them where they need to be, like Calicari, but we could get them there. But without the promotion, I think they're going to struggle on their own because it's great. One kid went to a camp a couple of weeks ago and he got a bunch of colleges following him on Twitter. That's great. But having a social promotion from us where we're putting out the video and talking over it, it's better than follows. It's actual evaluation. And so what I came away from this camp was, a lot of kids we could help. A lot of kids need our help. And I think, that's going to be the case for any non-all-star camp out there.
Absolutely. When you have, they like to say under, what do they call them? Under the radar guys, right? There's a whole business built under the radar videos from it. And that's what you have, though. You have an under the radar person, but has the ability to get there, or just needs a boost, or is it a place that people don't travel to go to that often. Only a few schools go to. The Delaware thing is always an example because it was interesting because there's a lot of there was like a crew of like 8 or 9 Delaware kids, and the quarterback who's the 2027 Jamison Tingle. He went 8'11" on the broad as a 2027 in a 4.85 and had a cannon arm already as an 8th grader. Is listed as 6'1", 185. That's a guy who will benefit tremendously. I mean, already has the potential, but it was interesting because I brought it up to you. If you remember at the camp, I said, remember the old, it was Red Lion. Then it became, something Christian school where,
Yeah. It says Red Line and it became, I forget what they called it.
I know. Well, they were the Honey Badgers, but I can't remember what the school was. But they had, the quarterback that had got offered in 8th grade.
David Stills,
yeah, Stills and all the kids. And, I remember Stills' father adopted one of the kids who went to Mississippi State. He had the hyphen Stills last name. And Delaware used to have nobody ever get offers. Then they got offers. I thought it was interesting when they brought those kids because I was like, a few of those kids they were young guys. They could be offered guys. And these are the things that you have to do if you're not from a quote unquote normally recruited spot, but it does make a difference. So that's where the promotions make a big difference in that same exact kind of way, but even more powerful because of the experience we have. And then a funny other thing I thought about was when you're talking about how you, when you would go to camps, you kind of stay in the same spot. I remember, I don't know if you remember this, but we used to run those Ultimate 100 camps. It was just like, 3 days or whatever. And one was freshman, like I think it was like freshman, sophomore, junior, or something like that. We did it. And I remember one of them was in Atlanta. I can't remember the school, but it was in right outside like Sandy Springs. And it was so blazing hot. I remember Jeremiah George, his shoes were actually melting. Who went and played in the NFL? He was at that camp. Went to Iowa State, and he was telling me he's like my shoes are on fire. I'm like, what do you mean? He's like, no, they're actually like melting. He's like, they're actually melting.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh. And then I didn't know what to do. I turned around over, and you used to take the towel. And you would get the water and you put it on it and you put it over your head. I saw you standing in like your normal spot with the hat on, like you always have, with the rag over your head. I said it must be blazing hot because Mike has the thing on his head to keep himself cool.
Some of those camps, I mean, and there was one particular summer, and that might have been the summer, but there was a Top Gun camp in Richmond where it was legitimately on the field like 118 degrees, and that field turf rubber, makes it even hotter. And yeah, I don't miss those days. There was also Top Gun did a camp in DeLand, Florida, and all these big names. It was like Top Gun at that time, had the Sharif Floyds of the world and, a bunch of 5-star guys, Ari Quandro. It was just blazingly hot. So this was cold, in that indoor facility. It's still not heated that well. Much better than hot. But, that's another thing too, is like you could tell, like your kid comes to you and says his feet are on fire. You could tell the kids that didn't want it then too. Like, and you have to make the best of whatever situation it is, whether it's in an indoor facility where the field turf is loose and you're not going to run the best time, or if you're outside and it's hot as hell and, you got to keep pushing through it. And that comes out. So anybody going to camps, that's another thing we're evaluating is your competition level and your want to be competitive, because there's always those guys that you jump the line or take extra reps. And there's always those guys that are a little meek and sit back and let people steal reps from them. And that's what colleges are looking for too. So, the camp process is evaluation from the second you arrive to the interview process and everything in between. So you got to be on your best. I don't know why I'm acting now.
Let me mute you and unmute. Yeah, try that again. Is that
all right?
Yeah,
I'm still going.
Are you?
Yeah.
Did
you change something?
I didn't change any. I would muted myself briefly, but maybe I have a different audio.
Yeah. Well, anyways, doesn't matter. So, anyways, you got to be wary of that because they're going to evaluate you. Now I'm not echoing, so this is good. They're going to evaluate you at every level, no matter what level it is. And like I said, it's not always the most talented kids that get scholarships. Sometimes it's the kids that work harder than everybody else. Sometimes I was having a discussion. I met with, Mark Bashanek, who works, has worked with me for 20 years and used to work with you way back in the beginning of your camps and stuff. And I had lunch with him, and then John Schmid, the All-American game, personnel manager, part of the selection committee for the last 20-something years. And we were talking about the NFL, and we were talking about sometimes we see names pop up of kids that we knew were good but not great, but they're 8-year NFL veterans now. Trenton Irwin is a great example. Now, Trenton Irwin is a wide receiver for the Cincinnati Bengals. He's their number 4 wide receiver. He was a 5-star out of high school to us. We're the only ones who had him 5 stars. He went to Stanford, had a very average career, but he's now in the NFL, and he's established in the NFL, and he's an NFL veteran and number 4 wide receiver on a team that is in Super Bowl contention. And the thought process that we had was Trenton Irwin was always good. He was a great 7-on-7 player. We had him as a 5-star talent, but that isn't why he's in the NFL. Like, his career wasn't great at Stanford. He has limitations. There's other players that are bigger, stronger, faster than him, but he's also less of a problem, and he's got a better work ethic. So if you're an NFL team and a college team to some extent as well. You want a guy that's not going to give you any problems. Guy's going to be yes or no, sir. Always do what you want him to do. Work hard. You're not going to have to babysit him. If you're that guy, so I saw some kids on Saturday that are probably slightly less talented than some 3-star kids that will get offers. But if they can differentiate themselves as harder workers, as guys that aren't going to give them any problem, and they might have to do this at the FCS level and transfer, they're going to have a better shot. It's not always the most talent that is going to get you where you need to be. It's everything. Character, grades. You made a grade speech, work ethic, all of that stuff is equally important. So, I'm used to going to camps with 200 kids, and about 180 of them are FBS level, prospects, depending on what grade they're in. But out of the, 90% of the camp or 80% of the camp is that. This was not that, but I also saw a bunch of kids that could be, FBS level football players, but they're not going to be unless they get, you just put a Bill's number.
Bill just commented, so I put it in there.
All right. So they're not going to be without help. I mean, I'm sorry, and listen, the initial, you and I talked about a lot of different reasons why there are people signing up, but people not signing up. I reach out to a couple of people after the camp, they say they're interested. They'll think about it, blah, blah, blah. It always comes down to trust and investment. You have to invest the money to get the reward. And it's trust. Do I trust these people? Are they just taking my money? Are they just going to do, a couple videos and forget about me, blah, blah, blah. And I can't overcome trust or money for anybody. But if you trust in us and you have the finances to help make your kid's dream come true, then I think it's worth it. And one other example, we just had Josiah Oxidine as a quarterback.
Yep.
It was in our program. And I never thought he needed our program. And I'm always honest with people about that. I mean, I thought it would help him because this is the difference. So you get guys who need our program badly to get one offer. And then the one offer brings 2, and then 2 brings 4. You need guys who need our program to get attention. Now, they've already got the attention of a lot of colleges, but they're not at that level where they're mentioned with like this. Josiah Oxidine is not mentioned with all the other great 2026 quarterbacks. Okay, like you could name off probably 10, 20, 26 kids, and he might be 12th or 13th in most people's lists. But this process can help you get offers that will put you in there. And if you don't think rankings are based on offers a lot of times, then you're fooling yourself. So he just got an offer from Tennessee just yesterday. And I'm not going to claim our program did it for him. I'm not going to claim that Josh Heupel looked at our feeds and said, wow, I got to offer this kid.
I'll claim it.
But I can tell you this, it didn't hurt.
I'll claim it.
It did not hurt. So now he's got Tennessee. Now watch what happens. He's going to get a couple others. And so let's say we did have any small role in here. Let's say Josh Heupel, who's a quarterback at Oklahoma and UCF head coach in Tennessee. Maybe let's say he's a quiet, fan of one of ours. Okay. Which I don't think he is, but let's say he is. And then he saw it. And he decided to offer him. Now this kid's going to get a bunch of other offers because of that simple offer. And he's going to get those offers, and it's going to give him a better opportunity to pick and choose exactly what school he wants to go to. And it puts him in a situation where he didn't need this. He's going to get his college paid for. But now he's got an offer from a school that's big enough.
The word acceleration, right? The word acceleration is the word I use. It begins to accelerate your process. There are guys that are going to get offers eventually at some point. That if you're looking to accelerate it, if you're that guy like a Meese and Oxidine and Jaffe, and they utilize that program in a different way than the kids than Hartman did, right? So those guys are utilizing it because they are really good, known at least somewhat. And now they accelerate their process. That's, I think, the big key. The Hartmans of the world and Cruvers, right? Cruver to Florida Atlantic, Hartman to Oregon State,
Alicari to Dayton.
Calcari to Dayton, right? Enlow to North Carolina A&T were very good players, but were not out there yet, right? So this helped to get them out there. They may have had one or two flaws that held them back from getting those initial offers in that first, when everyone went through the process on those guys, right? Well, now we're able to show how they progressed. They were late stage guys with us, right? Showed how they progressed, and now they end up getting offers, getting an opportunity. Look, I watched Hartman. Did you see the video of Hartman pin the guy in the district championship? Like,
Yep.
It also validates to me and you, I think, hey man, we were right in saying that this kid had the ability to be a Division I player, because look at him pinning and winning the districts, now going on to states. Like, he's a big guy, a big bear of a man who can move and is strong in hand-to-hand combat. And those things are very valuable as you go to collegiate level. When you have a program like what we have, we're able to really look and assess that and say, "Yee, this is a guy." Like, I remember you saying, "Hey, he's a wrestler." You said it to me, like, this guy's a wrestler. Like, and he's not just a wrestler like who goes out there and wrestles. He's a good wrestler. And now he's obviously, in his last year of wrestling, really taken to it. He probably knows this is his last year of probably wrestling, right? Takes to it. He probably could wrestle in college, is my guess. Guy pinning people in district, going on to state at that size. So that tells me that those are the guys down the line. You look up, and all of a sudden they're a 3-year starting center, at Oregon State or something like that, because they have that hand-to-hand combat, the good enough footwork, and the brightness to play the line and be able to do everything, right? And that's what the program. There's different types of players. There's the guys who need the acceleration. There are the guys that need to get out there, like aren't even out there. There are the young guys that are early stage in the program and want to really boost their process, get them, Marshallicks of the world, right? Who he was there. He did an excellent job he was in the showcase portion. And so there's different stages. So what I think I found, and I think you agree with this, we're able to kind of figure out where each person is in their process and tailor that so the guys who end up looking at it from a college standpoint see that they're in that part of the process and can evaluate them as is there, which I think is powerful. That comes from experience to me, at least the way I look at it is our experience, the many years of seeing so many different guys, right? You kind of have that experience to know what stage you're in, and you can help evaluate from that process.
Yeah. So, I think everybody, or most of the people who have signed up for it, have been happy. We've had some one-timers that, have gone on, didn't want to do, anything beyond the one time, and they've gone on to, maybe lesser than I think they could have had they done the 6 month. But that's, that's nothing I can do about that. And I think it comes down to eventually just like, we could tell you about it over and over again. We could, give examples over and over again. We could talk about it in circles, and it comes down to, do you want to make this investment or not? And I always come down to it. I don't have kids. You have a 7-year-old, but if I were a parent, I would do this, because there's nothing that's going to stop me from trying to make my kid's dream come true. Not $1,000 or $2,000 or whatever. I'm going to invest it. If I lose it, whatever. If my kid doesn't get what he wanted out of it, or if he doesn't get to the level he wants to out of it, but it's just such a good investment, just in case he does get everything out of it. I mean, the Enlows you mentioned, we still got Chase as our other guy, and we're retweeting his videos, and we got videos coming up on him and stuff like that. And he's in a better position than Bryce was, because Bryce came to us late. But Bryce going to A&T is great. I mean, that's great. He had nothing before, and now he's going to HBCU, great college. His brother will probably go a little bit higher level than that if he decides to, or he could go to the same school, because that's what brothers tend to do. They're happy. And I'm sure it wasn't easy for them to like hand over money to us, and there were no guarantees. We've had some people ask us, specifically about guarantees. And I tell them flat, I'm like, listen, you want a Division I scholarship, you want a guarantee of a Division I scholarship, I'm going to charge you $30,000, because a Division I scholarship is worth $250,000 to $300,000. So I'm not going to charge you $1,000 to get that for you. That's ridiculous.
Yep.
And if I'm going to guarantee that, I'm charging you 30 grand. I'm not guaranteeing that, nor would I ever. So I'm asking you for this amount of money for us to cut up these videos, put them out there, put our name on it, and get you the attention you're looking for. To me, it's a very minimal risk investment. But, we're in a crap economy. Money's tight for everybody. I get that too. We don't go overboard in the sales process. We don't like, come on, do it. I think the more you do that, then the more you have to deliver. And I don't feel comfortable doing that. I feel comfortable saying we're going to promote them as best we can. People are going to notice. If they like them, they like them. If they don't, they don't. And then that's it. But the more you try to sell, the more I think, you have to deliver. And I don't want to be in the promising business. So do it or don't. I think, there's a couple kids that I'm, going to talk to their parents, after this weekend, and we're going to have a couple brief conversations about it. And then I'm going to come down to say, well, if you don't do it, I wish you the best luck in your journey. I hope the kid ends up at Alabama, or wherever he wants to be. If you do it, then you're a client, you're on board. Let's do this together and let's figure this out. And so with that comes like little emails. Like I just got an email from the Greenlee kid's dad. It takes me 2 seconds to respond, and I will. So Hill Greenlee's this 2024 offensive tackle in Dallas, big kid, 6'7", 290. He just got invited to a camp. He's asking me whether he should go or not. I'll answer that question honestly, and it take me 2 seconds. But as part of this process of promoting him, I have no problem giving you that advice, especially if it comes in, like he asked me maybe a question a week. That's part of it too. We end up doing almost 8 to 10 promos for a 6-time kid. We just always end up doing more. I don't have a problem with that either, but it comes down to a decision. Either you're in or out. And I'm not going to be that guy. I mean, you saw me this weekend. I'm just the same guy I've always been. People, are like, is he arrogant? Is he a jerk? No, I'm just kind of introverted.
Yeah.
And I don't want to sell anything to anybody. So do it or don't. It doesn't
People
matter
don't
to me.
expect you to be introverted because
I know, because I have to put on this show. I had to do it very early in my career. I had to put it on radio, on ESPN. I was on ESPN in 2003, national television. I had to be this guy, who was very outgoing, and I play it off like I'm a grumpy guy, which I am, but I had to be outgoing. So people, when they meet me in person, are like, is this the same guy? He's like awkwardly weird, but that's who I am.
Well, I say if you watch our podcast, like I always, like you got to meet Coach D, who is like my he's my director of operations and stuff, and he was working with what position did he work with that day? He was working with the defensive players, and
is he the one with the beard?
He was the shorter guy. He had the beast. He had the NUC sweatshirt on.
Oh, the old one, the old sweatshirt.
Not the old, the gray, not the gray one. That's the line coach. That's the guy with the beard, the gray with Tom Risk, who's been with me.
Yeah, he was working with the O lineman, I think.
He was working when you were at camps. Like he remembers. He always says to me, he always brings up. He's like, remember when Mike had the it was so hot that he had the towel on. We always bring that up because he was there. But the younger guy, he's probably, I would say, he's mid-30s, had the black sweatshirt on, about 5'9".
Yeah. He's he was working with the linebackers.
Right. Yes. So he always watches the show because he works with me, and he knew your personality from watching the show. So, like I said, if you watch the show, our show, you see what we talk about, how we kind of like. It's different than when you go on Childer's podcast where you're talking about a specific thing. Here you're talking, it's a little bit more laid back approach or we're talking about, the promotion or whatever, we're talking about college football at the time, and you got this, a little more insight into your personality, which I think is great. So people, if they watch this, they'll know your personality better and they'll get to see it. But you wouldn't know because even here, like even though you're introverted, you're very personable, and it doesn't. You would never realize that someone who's on TV so much. That's one of the things that people don't realize about when you're on television, like you have been so many times, that you have to talk when you're on television, otherwise there's no programming. So you can teach yourself to do that even if you're introverted. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and I go back and forth whether I'm introverted or extroverted because I don't know what I am, but I do know that I'm uncomfortable around people who look up to me in any way, shape, or form. So, whether that's a parent, looking at me as an expert, or when you were introduced to me and I was against the wall and I'm on my phone and I heard you say stuff and I just didn't want to look up. I'm very uncomfortable with that. Any sort of accolades, like that guy you mentioned coming up to me, the legend, and I'm like, it makes me feel weird. But I'm also, it takes me a long time to get comfortable with people too. I met on the way home. I met Brian Toll. Remember Brian Toll?
Yeah, of course.
So I met him for breakfast. He was a kid that I covered, and he was a 2003 prospect, 5-star kid. Don Bosco. His dad was the coach at Don Bosco. Okay. He went off to BC. He got a couple unfortunate injuries, so he never made it in the NFL. But we became really good friends, and I'm 16 years older than him. But we became good friends through the process. And I met him for breakfast in Franklin Lakes on the way home. And I was uncomfortable for like the first 10 minutes. I hadn't seen him in like maybe 10 years. And I was uncomfortable, like almost like a shyness. Like, I don't know what to talk to this dude about. I mean, I wanted to see him. I'm the one who reached out to him and said I would be, in the area. And then after like 10 minutes, like everything started coming back. We started talking about old stories about his dad and, his dad coaching the East squad at the Army Bowl and how everybody wanted to quit after the first day because this is an all-star game and you're not supposed to practice hard. And he was having them do Oklahoma drills and full tackle, and his dad yelling at Brian and his older brothers at the dinner table and all this stuff. And I got into a sort of a rhythm again, but it took me a little while. At first I was kind of like, and that's because Brian always kind of looked up to me too, because I was the guy ranking him and I'm older than him. I just feel very uncomfortable in that role. So I don't even like any sort of accolades from anybody in person. Online, if anybody says, yeah, you're the best evaluator I've ever seen, which people don't, because on social media, it's all about how much you suck. I'm much more comfortable with the online you suck portion of things. But in person, I'm very uncomfortable with anybody who sort of looks up to me in any way, shape, or form. So that comes off too in these promotions when I'm talking to people. They're like, we really respect your opinion. We want you to help us. And I will, but I'm like, I'm not going to pick up the phone and call you and talk about it because it's just not who I am. So maybe I'm odd, but I think it comes off as arrogant. I think it comes off as a real jerk. I think it comes off as like I'm the king of the world and nobody else should talk to me. And maybe that's what it was when people were throwing DVDs in my head. I just wanted to get out of there early because I didn't want to talk to people, partly because of my awkwardness in that respect. But I can hold a conversation. I can talk to anybody. It's just I'm uncomfortable with it all. So that when you asked about the camp, that was the part I was a little uncomfortable at the end, taking pictures with kids, because their parents knew me and looked up to me. Weird, but I still want to help these people. Like I want to help everybody who signs up for it. I don't want them not to be successful. I mean, why would I take their money and then feel good about myself if they didn't get at least an honest effort out of us? They're going to get that at the very least. I've been surprised at how much success we've had, because remember the first one we had come through, I did an eval for, and I'm like, I sent it to you and I'm like, am I seeing this right? This isn't good. This is not good. There's nothing I can really say here that's going to make this anything beyond, Division III. And you're like, no, you're seeing it right. And I thought that was going to be how it always was. And then we got our next few, and I'm like, these kids are actually not bad. And I'm telling you, You put, Ben Hartman's film out there and say he's got 5 offers from, smaller schools, Rutgers, Maryland, Pitt, Northwestern. Nobody's going to know the difference. And he's not the best offensive lineman, but he's good enough to pass that way. Nobody just knows about him. So if we were to do that, like take a kid like this AJ Bosch kid who ran a 4.4 or 5.9, if we put out, social promotion, he just got offered by Rutgers and UConn, nobody would question it because he's good enough.
Yep.
It's just nobody knows about him. And that's unfortunately part of this process where you need that validation from offers to get other people interested in you. And we're not going to make those up, but I'm telling you, there's not as big a difference as I thought. Yeah, of course, Trevor Lawrence to the quarterbacks we saw this weekend, a bit of a difference, but that's the number 1 pick in a draft. But a 3-star kid in that same class who maybe went off to Iowa State versus a couple of the younger kids we saw, there's not a big difference at all.
I agree with you. And the change of the guard, especially the quarterback position, and how they choose the quarterbacks, I mean, it has to be vastly different than when you first started. I mean, you got guys that are 5'10" getting D1 offers and guys that are 6'5" getting D1 offers at the quarterback position. There used to be a standard kind of size that was a bare minimum, right? That quarterback has changed depending on the college style of offense, right? So what they're running kind of more dictates to what size they can get away with. I mean, obviously everybody wants to have a guy that's big and can run too and has a cannon arm. But you point right to Josh Allen, and he didn't even get the offers coming out, and he was big and could run and had a cannon arm. So it was kind of like those things. Like Josh Allen, I'll use him as an example. If we had this promotion back when he was coming out and we were doing it, he would have had at least 5 to 10 offers easily. And it's just because as the guys go through the process, if they get a guy they want, of course, especially quarterback has limited number of offers, right? They get a guy that they get hooked in, the staff buys into. They're not even looking at the next guy unless he's so much better than the person they have. And it's just that's how the process is. That's where the promotion helps so much. I mean, it makes a difference to be able to get them out there, and almost a validation too for those guys that were not necessarily in the process. Listen, I had college coaches reach out to me and some other guys and said, Mike Farrell is doing the promotion of players now. And I said, yeah, like he's like, they're like, it's so interesting how he's taking what used to be his model with like the 5-star when you would have, talk about the benefits of a top guy, right? Like what he did. Because I remember your old videos on that stuff, I don't know, Noel Divine, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
Oh, well, how he changed his direction. Ain't nobody like that back in, the greatest highlight video of all time, in my opinion. And, I remember that video when you did it on him. Now you're taking that similar process, but applying it to those players that we have coming across to show what they can do, that the guys that have the ability, what they can do. And it's very intriguing because now the truth is you were evaluating 4 or 5 stars, right? What schools we're going to look at those? The probably top 10 schools in the country, mostly. Okay. But if you were at Pittsburgh, you might not feel like you could get that guy. So there really is a huge benefit with what we're doing because, Pittsburgh is still looking for a guy that has the capability maybe of a 4 or 5 star, but is either not yet there, for some reason, everyone keeps telling Pittsburgh or West Virginia or I don't know, Maryland, right? You should look at these guys. You should compete with Alabama for those players. But they know that maybe they might get one. They might win one of those battles, but they're not winning 15 of those battles. They're going to win maybe one battle, and they got to fill out the rest of their roster with those 14 other guys that have potential. So if they go against Alabama down the line, maybe they can pull an upset. Maybe they can compete, right? And that's what I think is unique. You're taking that skill set evaluation you had with the 4 and 5 stars, and you're applying it to players that a lot of other guys still have to value. There's plenty of Division I and FCS schools that are looking for the right guys for their program, and we're helping to facilitate that in the right way so they can maybe see those attributes.
Yeah, and the other part about that too is like if you see a kid in our promo, honestly, if you're a college coach, and again, I don't expect any of our promo kids to ever go to Ohio State or Alabama or, even the tier 2 blue bloods, and I count like Florida State as a tier 2 blue blood right now, and they could be back to tier 1. They just won 10 games this past season, and Mike Norvell's got them rolling. But the blue bloods, the Ohio States, the Michigans, the Texas, the Alabamas, Georgia now, USC. I don't expect any of our kids to ever go to those schools ever. They don't need us. They don't need this. Nick Saban's not even on Twitter. Now, of course, he's got, Bob Melton and his other guys evaluating this stuff, but they're not looking in our timeline for guys. But what happens is you mentioned the Pitts and West Virginias, Maryland's and Cincinnati's and all those schools. If you see one of our guys, honestly, my theory as a player personnel developer, I would invite the kid to a one-day camp workout in the summer. I wouldn't make him go through the 4-day team stuff. I would take a kid and I would say, show up, you got to pay, obviously the summer, you got to pay $80 or whatever it is, and let's evaluate you. And I would do it just simply because what if I'm missing something? You mentioned Josh Allen. Okay. Josh Allen, grew up west of Fresno, and he grew up a Fresno State fan, and Tim DeRuyter was the head coach there at the time, and they begged for a Fresno State offer. Like he was a 6'3", like 185-pound kid in high school. Didn't go to many 7-on-7s at all. He was a baseball player, basketball player, a lot of conflict of interest when it comes to his time, and he didn't go to 7-on-7 or individual camps. And they wanted to go to Fresno, and DeRuyter said no. I'm not interested. San Diego State wanted him as a walk-on, but they said even if you come here, you're not going to play. So he ends up going to Wyoming, which is obviously down a level at FCS at the time, and he turns out to be a first-round draft pick and one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL. Just in case you're going to miss some, you might see somebody like that, and you might fall in love with what you see in person, and it costs you nothing. In fact, they're paying you. So anybody who's in our program, I tell college coaches, just invite them to summer camp. You got nothing to lose. We're not going to trot out some kid. We evaluate this film. We don't take anybody. If you can't, after that first one, I was like, we're going to look and see. And we're going to be honest, right now, I think your FCS level or Division II level, or, your goal should be, group of 5 or preferred walk on at a Power 5. We're going to evaluate them. We're not going to promote anybody who's just horrible.
Right.
Because then the coach might actually invite him to summer camp. He might be awful. And then he's going to hit me up and say, well, why are you even promoting this kid? It ruins any credibility you had. So we're not going to do that. So if you're in our program, it's, first of all, it's we accept you as well. It's not like we're, asking you to pay for the program just because we want the money. Like, we're not going to invite you to the social promotion unless we think you're, at least FCS level. But if you're looking at these, just invite them, because you just don't know in this day and age who you're going to miss and who you're going to see and who you're going to like. And, Bryce Enlow's a good example. He ended up at North Carolina A&T. He's not the fastest, not the quick twitchiest linebacker. He's not the tallest linebacker. He's not the longest linebacker. He's not the most athletic linebacker. He's very good at, reading the play instinctually. He's football smarts. He would be a kid, I think, if he got on earlier with us, and we didn't exist. He was one of our first guys, so it's not his fault at all. But if we had him as say, he was a 2023 and we got him in 2021, we could have placed him even higher than that and given him more options. And I just mentioned all the limitations he may have as a football player, but it doesn't matter because he would have got to those camps at Syracuse and UConn and UMass and Boston College and Rutgers, all those regional camps, Temple, had he wanted to, had he been able to pay for those one-day evaluations, and he probably would have ended up getting a bigger offer. So it's both sides. I mean, colleges, and I don't think any college coaches are spending their time on a Monday afternoon watching this. But if they are, invite these kids to summer camp. It's not going to hurt you. And for players themselves, know that this is a 2-tier evaluation. It's us evaluating you. I always ask kids. I had a 2026 father of a New York quarterback. I asked him to send me the film, and I thought this kid would be a good candidate and we could help him. Now, he hasn't signed up yet. I don't know if he will or won't. I'm at the point where I'm going to say, if you don't, I wish you luck. If you do, let's get started. You send me your film and you're not good, my response to you is going to be, I don't think we can help you. Not in a bad way. Not that you suck and we can't help you. Just, I don't think this program's a fit for you. So we're evaluating as well. So we're not, let's put it this way. When I was inviting kids for the 5-star challenge, I was extremely picky. I had 8 quarterback spots for 4 teams, and I wanted Trevor Lawrence and Justin Fields that year, the number 1 and 2 players in the country. And my other 6 quarterback spots were going to be 5-star or 4-star kids. That was an extreme level of pickiness. This, if I think you're okay and I think I can help you, whether that's D2 to FCS or FCS to Group of 5, we're going to do it. And we're going to be successful doing it, I think. We got to wrap it up, though.
Yeah, no, that was great. I'll tell you this. What was really good is that we covered, and I had it here transfer portal, but we could talk about that next week a little more because obviously transfer portal. We've had players reach out to us. They're trying to figure that out.
We got a guy, James Hogan, the kicker. So this is a great example. He's a lacrosse player. He hasn't played college football. His dad hits me up. I say, send me the film, because I'm not going to just say, okay, give me your $300 for the portal, promotion, and have this kid, hook 18-yard field goals or whatever, 25-yard field. He sent it to me. The kid's got a cannon of a leg. Cannon. I mean, he's hitting 55-yarders from the right hash. He's got that natural draw to it. Now, again, he could go out there and play for some team and miss his first 8 field goals. I don't know. I don't know about kickers, but I know he physically can crush the football. And he's never played college football. So he's in our program. Already the dad got back to me and he said, he got a bunch of coaches that are interested. And interested, he's already getting people to DM him and stuff like that, which is great. But that's part of the portal product. And that's probably the biggest reach that you could find in the portal. A kid who's never played college football. And I guarantee you, he's going to get a walk-on offer. I'm not saying scholarship kickers are very hard. Half the schools don't even scholarship kickers, and someone who's never played college football is not going to get a scholarship. So it's very unlikely he's going to get a scholarship, but he's going to get that preferred walk-on status at some school and get an opportunity to win a college kicking job. And that's all you can ask for. So the portal one is equally important. If you're good enough, though, because if that kid sucked, if he couldn't kick, I was just being like, we can't help you. And that's what I'll tell you. So send us your film. If I think I can help you, we get random film. As you know, you'll just get a huddle link in your DMs, right? Or an introduction. My name's such and such. This is such and such. Here's my huddle. You won't get like, hey, I heard about your promotion. Can I sign up for it? You don't get that. But if I respond to you and say we have a social promotion that can help you, it means I've watched your film and I think we can. And if I do that, I think it's smart to just jump on board and let us help you.
There's no other better way to close than that. Fantastic. Go to myfootballcamps.com/D1 if you want for the social promotion with me and Mike. Myfootballcamps.com/transfer for transfer athletes because that's going to be ramping up as we get towards April. And then obviously if you want to go showcase their camps, you go to myfootballcamps.com or NUCsports.com. And all the social promotion stuff's on those basic sites anyway. Mike is at MikeFarrellSports.com. Make sure you can always DM us your film like Mike just talked about. It'd be great if you put in there interested in the social promotion because we get a lot of links. And what Mike hit on there is a really important thing. We get so many links to come in. It can be a little overwhelming. So if you put that in there, we can take a look at your film a little faster. I think you agree with that. That will help us look at the film a little faster because we already know that there's an interest. You're not just sending us a link with a hope and a prayer. There's an interest in something there. So until next time, anything else you want to say, Mike?
No, I think that's a good point because right now I just looked at my DMs, and these are the I accept all DMs. My DMs are open, so to speak. So if I follow you, then you can DM me and you go into it. But the unsolicited DMs, I've got 45, and they're all film links. And I'm going to look at each one of them. But if you say, "Listen, I heard you have a promotion. Can you look at my film? I'm interested in it." You're going to go to the top of the list over someone just randomly sending me their film and asking me for evaluation. So that's a good point.
No doubt about it. What's amazing is and we'll sign off with there's actually like pro football going on right now with XFL, and then I guess maybe I can't get into it. I don't know.
No, I can't. USFL, I used to love when the USFL was competing with
Oh yeah,
the NFL back in the day. Herschel Walker and Doug Flutie on the New Jersey Generals and Mike Rozier and the big name guys going there. I used to love it, and they've kept the tradition of those USFL teams and jerseys and stuff like that. I watch it now though; it's unwatchable. I can't watch it. They're just not. It's just not XFL. I mean, that's how good the NFL is and how good college football are. They're two really good products that are just so head and shoulders above everything else that even me, who's dying for football right now, it's late February, worst time of the year for football fans. I can't watch it. It's unwatchable.
It's unwatchable. The NFL needs a D League thing, some sort of D League thing, where I'm not saying it has to be NFL branded, but somewhere it could be the USFL, but co-signed by the NFL, because I think that would be a better process to take these guys who got cut, who are on the verge, were practice squad guys, and say, hey, listen, you were a practice squad guy. We need you to go develop now for 3 months. You know what I mean? Like they do with the D League. I think the NBA has that part pretty good. I know this old OT elite thing is trying to nip at the buds of that D League with the I don't know if you've seen that, but they're doing that also with 7-on-7 OT sevens overtime. I don't know if you heard of Overtime Sports.
Mm-mm. Oh, I've heard of overtime. Yeah, yep.
Yeah, they do this OT elite where it's like we'll talk about next. I'll bring it up next week, but like 15 to I think it's like 15 to 19, like a mini pro basketball league, and they have their own arenas. You probably could Google it real quick and find it. But they did it also with 7-on-7 last year, briefly with like the South Florida Express. Maybe Boom went, and they're trying to include more because we may put our club in it. It's just that it's in July, and a lot of kids are back in their high school teams, so it's not as easy to get them out there. But as that becomes bigger, they're trying to tap that like group of kids that are going to probably be NIL guys, is my guess. NIL guys or potential pros, but it's interesting because that's almost like a I wouldn't call it a D league. I would call it like a not double D, because double Ds are nice. I would call it like maybe like a sub D league type of thing. But it's interesting how they're trying to dip into that market. But I think the NFL needs like in order for something in the spring to work, it would have to be like an NFL D League, and it can't be an NFL Europe because no one's going to watch that if that failed already. Like they keep going back to around to some of the things that have failed already, and I'm like, why do we keep redoing the failure things? Let's like figure out something that ties into the NFL, even if it's just sub hosted by the NFL, meaning it's its own entity, but NFL's co-signed on it. I think that it would be a better product as a whole. I hate the WNBA, but the WNBA having the NBA behind it gives it a chance. You know what I mean? If the WNBA was just like, I don't know, the WBA, Women's Basketball League, with no affiliation to the NBA, it would last a month. But that affiliation has been able to keep funds in it, so they have a high level of competition. Even though I like girls college basketball because I'm a UConn guy, of course. I like girls college basketball at the highest level is enjoyable to watch. I don't really watch WNBA, but I see how the product that the way they do that is a good tie, and the NFL could use stuff like that, I think.
Yeah, it would help certainly, but again, I don't think that's ever going to happen because
No, I agree.
you're not going to put good players like the NBA is a rookie league and all that. So you're not going to put players at risk because there's much more chance of injury, having them play in the spring or summer. So we'll just have to muddle through this awful football, and I guess just focus on spring football, which is coming. So and the draft, we got the combine this weekend, starting this weekend, so I'll focus on that. But yeah, I'm not gonna watch this other stuff. So all right, let's get out of here.
Yeah, let's get out of here. We'll see you next week. Thanks, Mike. I'll talk to you soon.
All right, see you.